James Taylor is a writer, policy analyst, radio host, and public speaker. He's also a senior fellow for environmental policy at the Heartland Institute, a nationally prominent free market think tank. He oversees energy, environment, and climate issues at Heartland, which The Economist, the magazine The Economist, calls the world's most prominent think tank, promoting skepticism about man-made climate change. You know Al Gore's not on board with that. The George Soros funded, anybody know George? Yeah. The George Soros funded liberal activist group Media Matters listed Taylor and the Heartland Institute at the very top of its climate denial machine. I imagine that's kind of a badge of honor, isn't it? Yeah. He's also the communications director for Media Trackers Florida. Media Trackers Florida investigates and calls attention to liberal bias. What? Liberal bias in the media? That probably doesn't take long to go through, does it? Hey, that was funny. Oh, liberal bias and unethical conduct by the media, politicians, and government officials. He writes a weekly column for Forbes magazine and hosts the hour-long Inside Florida Politics program on conservative talk radio station 860 WGUL. He's presented energy and environment analysis on CNN Headline News, Fox Business Channel, MSNBC, and all of the other alphabets as well. He frequently testifies in government hearings on energy and environment issues. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Mr. James Taylor.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. First of all, I have to say, I just felt so pumped up coming here on the week after Memorial Day, just a couple days. Today's Tuesday, day after Memorial Day, and here at an American Legion post, and saying a prayer, saying Pledge of Allegiance, some things that people do every day through rote repetition, but to be doing it here at this time of year, it was just, I was getting goosebumps, and pulling into the parking lot and seeing the cemetery right outside where we have the tombstones of people who have served in the armed forces, who have defended our freedom, who defended our right to meet here, our right to call out the current administration, the IRS. That's something that most people in the world can't do. And we owe it to our military members, present, past, and future. And I hope that everybody really took that moment like I did. That was just wonderful. And it's truly an honor to be here. Now, and really, here's something just as an aside. Really just thinking about that and what it means, and saying the prayer first, which is something that becomes increasingly difficult to do these days in public. Yesterday, on Memorial Day, the History Channel type shows that are on there, I love Independence Day, I love Memorial Day for those shows, and many of them I have recorded on DVD. Just thinking about how, for people that don't see a connection between God and our country, and how God has looked over the United States of America and has blessed us beyond what we deserved. For anybody that's not aware of it, ask me about it. Because, for example, during the Revolutionary War, when George Washington evacuated Long Island, when the British came to New York City shortly after Bunker Hill, George Washington took the troops down to New York City. The British came, cut off the American army, would have destroyed their troops, ended the war right then and there, if not for a miraculous event. I'll tell you about it, if you're not familiar with it. The War of 1812, when the British raided Washington, D.C., set fire to the White House, destroyed the city. A hurricane came right when they did so, one that no one had seen coming, put out the flames, destroyed the British troops, chased them out of the city. They suffered more casualties from that storm than they did in combat. In the Civil War, Stonewall Jackson, probably the most aggressive general in the war, even more so than Robert E. Lee, a devout Christian. He had the opportunity to absolutely finish the war outside of Richmond early in the war. He had the opportunity to destroy McClellan's troops in the trap set by the Confederacy. Very devout Christian. And on a Sunday morning, and Stonewall Jackson never lost a battle on a Sunday, he was overcome with this stupor, this fog he called it, where people, his adjutants were coming in saying, come on, let's go. And there was a shroud over him, and the Union troops escaped, and as soon as they had escaped, that shroud was lifted. Events like that, just it's powerful, coming here in an American Legion post right after Memorial Day, saying a prayer and a Pledge of Allegiance. So anyway, also thank you so much for being here tonight. I don't know, let me just ask informally, but raise your hands. Who was very depressed after the November 2012 elections? Now, let me ask another question. Who is still depressed today? Yeah, it's been half a year. And one of the things that frustrated me so much, because I was depressed also, was watching, Tim mentioned my Inside Florida Politics show every Saturday, 3 p.m. on WGUL, was trying to get people motivated to pay attention to what's going on here in Florida, here locally, and nationally. Because so many people just gave up. That's it. And if we give up, we're doing exactly what the left wants us to do, exactly what the collectivists want us to do. Remember after 2008, maybe you remember, I think it was Time, it might have been Newsweek, the cover, we're all socialists now. That was 2008. What happened in 2010? Yeah, the media wanted us to believe that it was all over. The media wanted us to be depressed. The media wanted us to be dispirited. The media wanted us to shut up and go away and accept our fate. That's what they want us to do right now. But by showing up here tonight, by showing up every week, we're proving them wrong. I mean, think about it. Barack Obama, you'd have to put him right up there with Ronald Reagan as far as charisma, as far as people wanting to root for this man on a personal level. How much did he win that election by? 2 points? 2 percentage points? I mean, come on. That is not the American people giving an endorsement for those policies. That's personality winning. Let me ask you this, because it's not just the presidency. Why are the Republicans vilified in the press as the party of no? Why is that? Would they care? Would they be saying it if Republicans in Congress were impotent? No, they're doing that because Republicans control by a substantial margin the House of Representatives. No legislation can make it through Congress without the House being on board. President Obama, he can certainly use the bully pulpit. He can use his powers in the executive through the administrative agencies. I mean, the presidency is a powerful position. But no legislation can get through Congress without the House of Representatives going along with it. And the House of Representatives is overwhelmingly Republican because of the November 2012 elections. Every House member was on the ballot, every single one. If this was some type of sea change where we have to accept our fate with our tail between our legs and go away and accept it, the House would be strongly Democratic like it was after 2008. But it's not. But it's not. Let me ask you this too. We have a requirement right now that we have to purchase fuel with a 10% ethanol component. Who here loves that law? Exactly. Who here loves the law that tells us that we have to use light bulbs that are compact fluorescent with the yellow glow? Yeah, exactly. And I could go through a litany of things. How about prescription health care coverage from the government? Who here likes the fact that we were bankrupting our nation long before the Obama stimulus? These are things that were passed under a Republican president, George Bush, and with Republicans either controlling Congress or a very strong minority. The fact that a Democrat won the White House in 2012 by no means ends the discussion. In fact, I will take Barack Obama and a strongly Republican House of Representatives over a squish Republican and a squish Congress any day of the week. Right now, if we did not have the compact fluorescent bulb requirement, if we did not have the ethanol requirement, if we did not have prescription health coverage, prescription coverage for all, there is no way any of those would make it through into law right now. Because the Republican-controlled House would say no. If we had a squish Republican and a squish Republican Congress, they would become law. They did become law. By meeting here in places like this, in groups like this, we are doing a lot more. We're being a lot more effective than the media wants us to believe. Congress has become so much more conservative in terms of the Republicans there. Remember how the media was telling us that when Rand Paul was running in Kentucky, he's blowing it, they're going to lose the race because of it? Ted Cruz in Texas, going through all the Tea Party folks that were running, how horrible this was being, how we're going to lose seats. Yeah, we probably lost 3 or 4 seats in the Senate overall because of that, but I'll tell you what, I'll take 1 Rand Paul to 6 John McCain's any day of the week. I'll take 1 Ted Cruz to 6 Lindsey Grahams any day of the week. The media vilifies Republicans as a party of no because Republicans right now, conservative Republicans, free market, limited government, conservative Republicans are exerting more influence, more clout than has ever been the case in our memories. And they can't stand it. That they want us to think we're defeated. They want us to say, see, look, Barack Obama won by 2 percentage points. You guys have no chance. You guys might as well give up in the 2014 elections, even though Barack Obama won't even be on the ticket. I promise you this, 2014 may not be quite what 2010 was, but it's going to be a lot closer to 2010 than to 2012 or 2008. The only way it's not going to happen is if we believe what the liberal media want us to believe, and we're going to sit at home with our tail between our legs, all depressed and dispirited. It's okay to be depressed that at the top of the ticket, Barack Obama won, but that's not the end of the world, and we can do something about it, and we will do something about it. Now, when I'm on the air each Saturday on WGUL, 3 p.m., write it down, 860 on your station. It's also available on the internet, so you can listen at home. You don't have to turn on the radio. I focus almost exclusively on state and local issues. And there's a reason for that. As depressed as we are about Barack Obama winning the election, even knowing that we have a strongly conservative House of Representatives and a Senate which is not nearly as conservative in terms of the Republican Party, but more conservative than it has been in a long time. Let me ask you this, and if you know the answer, call it out, or take a guess. In our 50 states, how many states have Democratic governors right now after the 2012 elections? 19. 19. Less than 40%. There is a supermajority of Republican governors. The states, the 50 states, you put them all together, they elected a supermajority of Republican governors that have the functional equivalent at the state level of the same powers that Barack Obama has at the federal level. This is something that the media doesn't want us to think about. They want us to be dispirited. They want us to accept defeat and go away. Folks, I'm going to talk about in just a little bit why it's so important, who is governing our states and the policies and their impacts. But let me tell you this, the 2012 elections brought in an even larger number of Republican governors than was the case before. How about the state legislatures? Does anyone know how many state legislatures are controlled by Democrats? 17. 17. 27 are controlled by Republicans, the rest are split. Again, there's a supermajority of states that has Republican-dominated legislature. Governors and state legislatures. Again, the media wants us to go away. They want us to think that we're defeated and crushed. That can only happen if we accept that myth, if we accept that lie, if we believe we're all socialists now. That's the only way we're not going to expand those numbers in 2014, because Barack Obama will not be at the top of the ticket. That's why I salute everyone in this room. That's why it's important to let your neighbors know, your friends know, when people are depressed. My buddy there, Doug Carducci there, I know how depressed he was after November 2012. I still have to pump him up sometimes. But you know what? We're winning. We are winning. We may have lost because Barack Obama has a charismatic personality, because people, let's face it, given a chance to put someone in office coming from a group that has not had representation in the entire history of this country, it makes Americans feel good to vote for him. It does. I mean, it's good to know that anybody can become president, no matter where you're from. Barack Obama won't be at the top of the ticket in 2014. Barack Obama won't be at the top of the ticket in 2016. And for all the talk they're telling us, oh, Hillary's going to run, so you have no chance. Well, okay. I can tell you right now, the crop of Republican candidates in 2016 is going to be so much stronger than anything we've seen since Ronald Reagan. Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, Scott Walker, Paul Ryan. I'm not going to mention Chris Christie. But still, exactly. But the point is, we have a number of strong, viable candidates. So don't be depressed. Don't get down. Keep fighting. because we're making a tremendous amount of difference. At the grassroots level, I have a checklist here of specific ways in which we are making a difference, besides just the numbers that we have in terms of governors and state legislatures. We are laying a foundation, even when we lose. Even if we were losing in the state governor races, in the state legislative races, even if we were losing there too, which we're not. Right now, right here, we are laying a foundation for the Republican Party to be the Republican Party that we've always wanted them to be. The Republican candidates that run for office locally, in Florida, throughout the nation, believe so much more in free markets, in limited government, in the conservatism that we believe in than was the case 6, 7, 8 years ago. Even when we lose these races, which we're not losing nearly as much as the media says, we are making a huge difference because what we're doing is setting a course for the future. No party is going to win the presidency 6, 7, 8 times in a row. No party is going to control Congress for 30, 40 years straight. There are going to be swings, there are going to be ebbs and flows. What we're doing right now is we're ensuring that when the next swing occurs, and I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than people think, we're not going to swing to John McCain and to Bob Dole and to Gerald Ford and Nelson Rockefeller. Woo! People want us to be depressed right now. Can you imagine, some of you may remember, what it would be like after Jimmy Carter wins in 1976, when you say, boy, I sure can't wait till we get back to Bob Dole and Nelson Rockefeller. Without Jimmy Carter beating Gerald Ford, we would not have had Ronald Reagan in 1980. Without Barack Obama, I think it's quite possible we wouldn't have the current wave of conservatism in the Republican Party that is now the dominant force, that sets fear in the hearts of the establishment in Washington, D.C. And the crop of candidates who we're going to have to choose from in 2016 is going to be much more conservative, much more limited government, much more free market than would have been the case. Barack Obama drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. At the same time, if John McCain had won in 2008, we would have global warming legislation, we'd have big government cool conservatism, we'd have many of the same programs, and the worst part is Republicans in Congress would have to go along with it or they would be called traitors. Mitt Romney who was running in the fall of 2011 would have been the same way. Early in 2012, Mitt Romney got rid of a lot of his staff. The media didn't report this. I know this because I started working with the Romney campaign in some regards. But his staff became a lot more conservative. I had hoped that he really would govern as a conservative, but I don't know for sure because before then, he was pretty much the same as John McCain. But our future is so much rosier, is so much brighter right now because it would be great if we didn't have to go through the bad times, the dark years. But we're going through it, and because of that, we are becoming a much more conservative Republican Party. I say we, there are people here I'm sure that aren't members of the Republican Party. The Tea Party was not a Republican Party movement. It was a movement of people that were so disgusted with both parties that they felt the need to speak out as a separate entity. The Republican Party professes to believe in the same principles as the Tea Party. If and when they get their house in order and govern as they campaign, well then they are natural allies of the Tea Party. And that's why, of course, we're all depressed about Barack Obama winning. But the fact of the matter is it's not Republican, it's not Democrat. We have so many of our elected officials that campaign is one thing. They tell us one thing to our faces, and they get to Tallahassee, and they get to Washington, D.C., and they do something entirely different. That's why it's so important that we're here putting the pressure on them all the time. That's the reason why I'm on the air every Saturday at 3 p.m., because I'm holding their feet to the fire too. We are doing something incredible. Even if we lose elections, we are making sure that the alternative is not between Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. We're making sure that Nelson Rockefeller is not the heir apparent of the Republican Party. The folks in Washington, D.C. can't stand it. But for every time that you write a letter to the editor, or you write your state legislator, or you write your congressman, they have to tack more to the right. Because some politicians, they're in office because they want to put into place things that they believe in. But there are just as many who are there because they like having power. And every time they hear from us, that tells them they have to tack to the right. We're making a huge difference. It's also important, it's real interesting, during these campaigns I mentioned how some of the candidates we were told we're going to lose a seat to Democrats. You think of in Delaware, what was it, Christine O'Donnell, candidates in Indiana and Missouri that just weren't ready for prime time. Well, that happens, but we have to make sure, first of all, that yes, people that are rising up in the Republican Party, or even some Democrats, I speak in a lot of state legislatures, there are some Democrats from some of the Midwestern states who still have the same values we do. They still do. But anyway, the point is, we can have a ballot here, and we can have a 100-question ballot on various political issues. And let's say we have a candidate that's 97% on target in terms of what we believe in as Tea Party members. And there's going to be some disagreement on various issues throughout the room. But if we were to say the majority position in this room, we have a candidate that's 97% right. And then there's a candidate that's 96% right, or 95% right. I'm seeing right now across the country, folks where you have two very strong candidates, where people are finding that one vote and then saying we have to support the other person because that person's 97%. I'd rather have someone agreeing with us 97% of the time to 96% of the time, but let's make sure that we're vetting these candidates at the local level. Let's make sure that when people are running for office locally that we know who they are, we know their character, we know they can conduct themselves in a general election and in office. And the reason I bring this up, because I don't want to see happen here in Florida, what's happening. I have some friends in the Arkansas legislature. I was invited to testify on energy issues there recently. And with the Heartland Institute, we're a free market think tank. Our message is geared toward state legislatures throughout the country. So I know legislators very well in all 50 states. The Arkansas legislature is about as hardcore conservative as they come in terms of their Republican Party. I mean, they're fantastic. And they had the same dilemma that we had here in Florida about the expansion of Medicaid. When the Supreme Court said, okay, Obamacare can become the law of the land, but the states can opt out of this Medicaid expansion. The Obama administration, they put us in a prisoner's dilemma. They said, here's the deal. The federal government is going to pay for this expansion. You all pay your taxes to the federal government. So if you live here in Florida, whether you like it or not, you're going to pay for the expansion of Medicaid in all those blue states that love Medicaid and Obamacare, and any other states that join up. So you have a choice. You can pay for everyone and not get anything, or you can pay for everyone and get something. Now for me, what I was hoping was that considering that we have a supermajority of states that are run by Republicans, that we would see some leadership, some governor at the state level would pull the Republican states together and say, all right, they're trying to put us in a prisoner's dilemma, but guess what? If we all band together and only 19 or 17 states accept it, we defeat that policy. That's what I was hoping would happen. I wish we would have had the leadership to do that. Hopefully we'll have the leadership soon because of groups like this here tonight. It didn't happen. Okay, that being the case, my own personal thought was, all right, self-interest says we should take the money and expand Medicaid. But then I thought, sometimes you just got to make a stand. You just got to do what's right. And if it means you're paying for somebody else to put them on the dole and you get nothing back, so be it. And that's where I came down on the issue. But I understood. If there were some legislators that said, look, we're paying for it anyway, I don't like it, I'm looking out for my constituents. All right, I'm not going to agree with them, but I'm not going to vote them out of office if they're consistently conservative across the board on other issues. And that's something we have to make sure that right now, for example, I bring this up, and I guess my head is elsewhere because I was speaking with some of these Arkansas legislators today. So now for the 24 races, they have primaries where they have people that are untested, and one of them lives at home with his mom, is running for state office, claiming to be a little bit more to the right than these legislators who have been conservative across the board on every issue under the sun, except that they said, well, my hands are tied on this Medicaid thing, I'll vote for the expansion. Let's make sure at the local level that we're going to be supporting candidates who are strong. Don't just agree with us, but are strong candidates. Candidates who are tested, candidates who are true. Let's make sure that the consistency is there across the board. Every now and then we're going to find a vote, an issue that we disagree with a candidate. But it's important for us to make sure that across the board, the general philosophy is a conservative one. Now, I mentioned my radio show, Inside Florida Politics. I also, as Tim mentioned, graciously mentioned, by the way, Tim, you didn't even read a third of my bio. Anyway, I write for for Florida Media Trackers. Our website is florida.mediatrackers.org. Just like my radio program, Inside Florida Politics, we focus on state levels, we focus on local issues. And I want to call your attention to that because, again, as I mentioned, we are having successes. And I say I'm reporting them. Hopefully I'm creating them in some regard. But in reporting them, it means that grassroots movements, grassroots groups, like this one here, like ours, are making a difference. So just to make sure that we understand that we shouldn't have our tail between our legs, here's just a few things that we've reported on, or news that we've broken on Inside Florida Politics and Media Trackers Florida just during the past half year. This is real interesting. In Florida, here in Hillsborough County, we have Tampa, which is one of the largest cities in the state. Just across the bay, we have Pinellas County, the most densely populated county in the state. For an urban area, an urban metropolitan area, we're actually pretty Republican and conservative compared to what you would think. I mean, you'd think this would be just a Democratic liberal bastion. But if you want to find that, all you have to do is go down to southeastern Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward County. We don't hear about it much here, but believe me, these counties are like Chicago on Biscayne Bay. It's incredible. The clout that they pull, pulling in pork, playing their special games in the legislature, in the current budget, Miami-Dade and Broward counties, just those two, they've got $2.7 billion in projects specific to those counties. When you combine Hillsborough and Pinellas, we're at about 1. Now, Miami-Dade and Broward County does not have 2.7 times as many people here as we do in Hillsborough and Pinellas, but they're playing their political games. The political games that Democrats, collectivists play, especially in Miami and the Miami area, are just obscene. And one of the ways we see this is that we have in legislatures across the state, Florida state law requires that you live in the congressional district that you represent, the state senate, the state legislative district. We have exposed close to a dozen of our state legislators, every single one being Democratic, almost all, it may even be all, in southeastern Florida, in the Miami area, that do not live in their district. By and large, they have these multi-million-dollar homes or homes on golf courses that they live there with their family and their wife. They don't pretend to be estranged. They rent this little flea bag apartment behind a strip mall in their plaza, and then they say that they live in the district so they can stay in office and keep their power. So what we've done is we've exposed this, and because of what we've done, most of the time, these folks are still claiming their homestead exemption on their multi-million-dollar oceanfront home or their golf course home. Yet they're saying at the same time, under oath, that their primary residence is in this flea bag apartment that they say they live in without their family. So as a result of our reporting, we have had the local property appraisers yank the homestead exemptions, so they have to pay a financial penalty for doing non-residents. That's local grassroots activity. These are things that we can expose, and some of those stories we were tipped off to by the local grassroots folks in the Miami area. We can make a difference. We are making a difference. At Media Trackers Florida, I deal primarily in energy and environment issues on the national level. And there is this global warming activist by the name of Michael Mann. And he's a climate scientist, but he's more an activist than a scientist. And in the news, his favorite mode of attack is to be calling out the motives of people who disagree with him, who don't think we're facing a global warming crisis, including saying that people who disagree with the asserted global warming crisis are doing this solely for money. They're getting rich off it. That's why we disagree, because we're getting paid to do so. So Michael Mann was coming here to Florida to give a talk at a public university. Our tax dollars paid to have him come in. I and others have frequently invited him to debate the issue, and he refused to do so. So for Media Trackers Florida, seeing that he was coming here, we decided to invite him to speak. My associate, Alyssa Carducci, invited him to speak at a conference and asked how much it would cost. His agent quoted us a figure of $10,000 to give a short presentation. When we broke news on that achieved national attention. Michael Mann has shut his pie hole on that issue, and he's not trying to say any more, or at least I haven't seen it in print since then, that people who disagree with him are simply bought and sold by fossil fuel money. So again, at the local level, we're making a difference. One that you may have seen on the CBS local WTSP news about 2 weeks ago. WTSP broke a story. This is just appalling. This is not so much political, it's just what happens when government has the opportunity to have power and money at our expense. You know the red light cameras that have been put in place around the country a couple years ago? Yeah, I hate them too. And when they were put in place, I thought, well, yeah, people run through red lights and people die. And we can't save lives. And I sympathize with that. I also don't like the idea of government putting cameras around everywhere. And you can't make your case to a police officer if someone was tailgating you and you knew if you hit your brakes you'd get rear-ended or some other condition. You're stuck with a ticket. But here's the thing that's just really appalling now. WTSP reported that right after the red light cameras were put in place, at the urging of American Traffic Solutions, which is the company that makes the red light cameras and receives a percentage of every ticket you and I are forced to pay when we run through a red light camera, they shortened the yellow light times at those cameras intersections without telling drivers. So you know when you're driving through the intersection closest to your home or on your way to and from work, you know how much time you have to make it yellow. They cut the time down, didn't tell us, now people run through intersections. Last year, state government officials collected more than $100 million in fines for red light violations. More than half of that $100 million occurred solely because they shortened the yellow light times. Those tickets would not have been red light runnings had the yellow lights remained the same time they were before. WTSP, they started investigating because they were covering an accident, and I believe it was in Pasco, it might have been Hernando County, where a lady ran the red light just barely, went through the intersection, a collision occurred, someone lost her life. That would not have happened had the yellow light been the same. So anyway, WTSP, they reported that as they covered the story, they put on State Senator Jeff Clemens, Democrat from Lake Worth, arguing in favor of the yellow light camera, saying that there's no correlation between yellow light times and safety of intersections. So we presented a whole load of studies that had been produced by universities and others, traffic consultants, showing that yellow lights, when you shorten yellow lights, they're less safe. When they're longer, they're more safe. Also, of course, on top of that, when you're doing this without telling people that they're running the yellow lights, you're getting more than half your tickets that way. But the whole reason why they put the red light cameras in place, they told us the whole reason to take away our freedoms, our liberties, and have government monitoring us is for safety. But then they deliberately shortened the yellow lights and doubled the amount of people running red lights. They didn't tell us about this. We covered that. We covered the fact that Jeff Clemens, the mouthpiece for American Traffic Solutions, who cashes their campaign checks, they donate to him. He himself, over just the past 2 years alone, 2 speeding tickets, 1 ticket for crossing a barrier illegally, 1 ticket for not wearing a seatbelt, 1 ticket for running through a red light, and then Palm Beach County moved to suspend his license because he didn't even pay his tickets. So we covered that, and now that's been picked up nationally, so that hopefully other states will learn from our lessons here in Florida. And also now the state and local jurisdictions say they will look into their yellow lights and think about increasing that. That's something, again, we can make the difference by getting the word out here at the local level. And here's something else that's very important, getting back to the difference we can make. Don't forget, it's easy to forget what we have here. It's easy to forget the impact we can have. Florida is, without any competition, the largest, most populous swing state in the country. What we do here, other states watch and follow. What we do here sets the tone for the rest of the nation. So when we at the local level, when we make sure that here in Hillsborough County and Pinellas County and elsewhere, that our elected officials are indeed true to free markets, limited government, conservative principles, not Nelson Rockefeller, not Gerald Ford, we're sending that message to the rest of the country. We make a huge difference. When they vote on bills that can go either way, how we vote in Florida sends a message to the rest of the country. Your impact in this room is so much more powerful, so much more weighty than the impact of people in any other state in the country. It's another reason to stay motivated. I have a whole list here of other things that we've done locally that have made a difference. I'm going to have to cut it short because I don't want to bore you to death. Plus, I want to take questions if you have any. Another thing we do, just briefly here, is anybody here familiar with PolitiFact?
Liars?
There you go. PolitiFact Florida. You see their ads at the airport, you see their ads in newspaper stands. They're the self-declared neutral political fact checker. They're an arm of the Tampa Bay Times, which is about the most liberal newspaper in the country. I mean, people, everywhere I go, they say, oh, our newspaper's so liberal. No. I've lived in many places. The Tampa Bay Times takes the cake. PolitiFact Florida is an arm of the Tampa Bay Times. For Media Trackers Florida, every time PolitiFact Florida gives their ruling, and at least half the time it is a ridiculous, preposterous ruling, I call attention to it. I get the word out, I contact PolitiFact Florida, give them heat for what it's doing, and then spread the word throughout the state so that when other people, come campaign season, when they say, well, Rick Scott told a mostly true, said something that was mostly false, completely false, or pants on fire 2/3 of the time, then Rick Scott and others can point out the truth. Because what will happen is Charlie Crist, granted Rick Scott has turned more towards the left in the last few months, which is very disappointing, but for the first 2 years he governed quite well. He lived up to his campaign promises. Charlie Crist is going to run the commercials, you see it all the time. They quote from the editorial of the Washington Post, or they quote from even PolitiFact Florida. One thing that we're doing is making sure that people understand PolitiFact Florida is not a neutral fact checker. That's another thing we're doing each week. So anyway, the point is, what I'm trying to do is through Media Trackers Florida, through Inside Florida Politics, 1 hour every Saturday afternoon, get the word out on the issues that so many of us here in this room are following, that consider to be important, but that folks outside this room don't know about. And in fact, some of the things we don't even know about in this room. Because let's face it, I would imagine most of us here either watch Fox News or listen to daytime conservative talk radio. But when you're doing that, you're just getting national news and international news. The only place, unless you really want to go digging for local and state news, that you're going to get information is to a small amount through the liberal collectivist filter of the Tampa Bay Times, or what used to be a conservative paper, the Tampa Tribune, which no longer is. So what I'm doing for both my radio program and for Media Trackers Florida is I'm digging deep each and every day to present the truth, to present the information that we often don't even get because they won't report it. So these were some of the examples of stuff that we've dug up. So I encourage you, I beg you, I plead with you, log on to our website each day at Florida Media Trackers, where you'll get the information that the media doesn't want us to know, where our collectivist politicians don't want us to know. If you get a chance, listen to Inside Florida Politics. I hammer the state and local issues. I try to keep it entertaining, and it's usually information that is not generally available in the press. And that way, all of you here that are showing up through the dark times, after the Obama election, when you feel like it's for no benefit, that it's not doing any good, we know that it is doing good, but I'm also doing everything I can to give you the information to spread the word to others, to your friends and neighbors who aren't so sure. It's one thing to say in our gut, we know what's right and wrong. It's another thing to be able to show it to others. And then finally, if you do like what you hear on Inside Florida Politics, by all means, if you normally give to a political party, political candidates, I hope you'll consider supporting my show. Not a strong pressure push, but the fact is, Karen will tell you, Tim will tell you, it's expensive to run a radio program. You have to commit to a certain amount of revenues. If you don't get it, it comes out of your pocket. Right now, I'm paying a lot out of my pocket each week, but it's worth it to me to get the message out. I'm hoping at some point to come close to breaking even. That's what my hope is. So if you have a business to advertise, if you come straight through Inside Florida Politics, the rates are cheaper than they would be if you go through WGUL. If you just want to donate and support the cause, be happy to do that. I can also list you on my website. On the back table, I have business cards where you can see the web address for my personal website, where you can contact me for any reason. You see also the schedule for Inside Florida Politics. You see my email address. You see the website for Media Trackers Florida. So I encourage you, I hope you'll take that with you. Take more if you want to share with your friends and neighbors. And it was an absolute honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to be here this night, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.